I'm Jay Horton. I make movies that make money, and this is Filmmakers On. Today, I got a really special guest. I'm talking to the prolific director. I think his first film was Mosquito back in '94. He directed Spiders. He's done episodes of Xena Warrior Princess and Hercules. I think a couple of Sheena actually too. His latest film is Escape from Death Block 13. Gary Jones. How you doing today, Gary?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to
Good.
be back on with you there.
Yeah, man, it was really good to see you again. So let's jump in right into it. You've been doing movies for a long time. Do you think that the future of independent film is bright or bleak?
Um, I think I'm always optimistic, I mean, it goes through waves, like through the course of the career and stuff, things happen. Like, for instance, like, when digital started to come in, and the red cameras and everything, and all of a sudden it was accepted to shoot digital for movies. What was great for us, right? Because then we didn't have to get film cameras, we didn't have to go through it. So all of a sudden there was a savings on one end, and it opened it up for everybody to kind of get in. And so that was kind of a liberating thing. But then, of course, once something opens up for independent filmmakers, actually, like the same thing with the internet, like, hey, I could make a movie, put it online, and charge people to watch it, and they'll pay me to watch it. So you're like, wow, that's great. Well, but there's always something else, like it gets co-opted by Hollywood, or the big business takes over, and it just prevents the independent filmmaker from really reaching the audience without going through the gatekeepers. So it was kind of the same with digital. You could get into digital, and then but to get the really good cameras that they would accept, the quality, those were very expensive. So there was a bit of savings here, but it shifted over here.
Right.
So it was like there's always the shifts. So I'm always optimistic, that it's things are going to prosper. And I think from an independent film standpoint, it's definitely always going to be fresh and new, because people, there's access you have obviously to the gear, but there's the thing that they can't suppress, which is a good idea, and we all have free will, and we can all come up with ideas. So yeah, I think it's always going to be fresh and new. There's always going to be new stuff, new things coming out that inspire people to do more. And just when independent filmmakers get a foothold on something, it gets co-opted. So you're always scrambling. Like, one of the big things was the whole festival circuit. There would be like these festivals that would be seeking out independent film. And it was like, it was a place where new voices could be heard, or you could get your movie shown and people would see it. Well, little by little, the studios started like, well, hey, we should show our movies there. Let's sponsor that film festival. So I remember, I got a film in one of the film festivals, and they were like, great, they talked to us, we got it in there. Well, then, within a year or two, the big studios started putting their movies in there and started doing, co-sponsoring things and whatnot. And all of a sudden, the little films couldn't get in, they would let a few in. So it's like, it's always this up and down thing. It's like, if something's really good and it's making money in entertainment or movies, eventually the system figures out a way to get in there and get control of it. So, but the one thing they can't do is, they can't force me to sit down and just come up with great ideas and hand them off to them. So if I come up with an idea for something and I can't get anybody else interested in it, I can go out and make it, and I might make 3 of them and one of them clicks, so I'm always optimistic, because I think that's the one thing, it's like the age old thing, we have the freedom to do things, and that spirit's always there, and it's a challenge. It's a learning process all the way, but it's always a challenge,
Right. So you did Mosquito back in '94. Was that shot on film?
Yeah, well, actually, we started in 93. We
93.
shot
Okay.
on film. And yeah, because back then there was a couple of VHS tapes were really popular, right?
Yep.
There was a few horror movies that were shot on VHS, or on beta or whatnot, and they were really horrible, because the quality was just not there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were going to be taken seriously, you had to shoot on film. Now we shot 16 millimeter and we shot some 35 because we had a Mitchell camera so we could shoot some effects and plates and stuff. But our budget would only allow us 16. And I thought, well, Texas Chainsaw was 16 millimeter. At that time, you could still shoot 16 millimeter. And then if you had the money, you could blow it up to 35 when you went out for exhibition and trying to sell it. And that's exactly what we did. We shot in 16 millimeter. We finished the film. We shot some effects in 35. But then we took the whole film to New York to do art and we blew it up to 35. So when I went out to California, I had the big reels, the cans, the reels in it. So, we'd ship that print around and people would screen it. And at the time, there was kind of two processes. Most of the independent people would get their film and put it on like 3/4 inch tape, which is a big 3/4 inch tape, right? Sometimes 1 inch, but mostly 3/4 inch. And they would send their movie around to the different distributors and the VHS tape distributors and the low budget companies. And I always thought that if you did that, it's in a box like this. The idea was they didn't spend much money, but if you went with film reels, they had to spool it up and project it. And it gave the error that it was a bigger deal.
Okay.
So, we spent, I don't know, 30, 40 grand blowing it up. It's a lot of money. But the psychological impact was when we got out to LA and we were screening it, the reels had to be sent around. So people took it more seriously, and ultimately it worked and we got a deal. But yeah, that was back in the day when you kind of had to do that, it was really on film.
Yeah, I really like that movie. I remember seeing it on VHS or VHS rental, like probably that year after it was released. That was your project, right? Like that wasn't brought to you, like that was something you developed and got going?
Yeah, I mean, it was an idea, I've been working on the assembly line, making car seats, and me and my buddies in the assembly line, we were always talking about movies and stuff. And then somebody brought up, skeeters, because we were talking about monster movies, big bugs and big insects, and yeah, skeeters. And I'm like, skeeters, holy cow, that hasn't been done. So that was sort of like the germ of it starting. And I thought, okay, I needed to figure out a movie that I could do that would get me noticed. And I thought, you can always have a guy chasing people through the woods with an axe, or killers, in a house. I mean, you could do the same old stuff. But I thought, because I had an effects background, I thought if I could come up with a creature, and of course, Aliens had come out, a few years earlier. And, we'd seen the original Alien, and then Aliens came out, I think it was 86, I believe, or somewhere around there, like 10 years earlier. And that always blew me away. I just love that style. And I love the fact that Cameron came out of effects into making movies. So I said, that's my way in. And so I was able to convince investors to put money on the line based on the fact I could do the effects. I hadn't made a movie yet. Right. So it sold them. They saw a big giant rubber bug on the table there, and they went, I go, that's our star. That's what the movie's about. And I said, it's $1 million idea. It's never been done, So it really worked. But that was, ground up, figured it out, came up with a concept. First thing I did was, draw some storyboards of shots I could see that would be in that movie. Started working on a script and sculpted a big giant bug. And that was it, So it was like, I got to make a noise, right? I got to get noticed.
Right. One thing that stood out to me in that movie, especially in today's market, because you'll see a lot of, purposefully campy material. Like you'll see stuff like, zombie beavers or Sharknado,
Zombie beaver,
yeah. Yeah. And like Mosquito could have easily been of that ilk, but it wasn't. Like I remember watching it thinking, yes, the premise is outrageous, but right. Like you took the characters and the action and the story very like seriously. Like it played it. There are funny moments for sure, but it played it straight. And I think a lot of these other movies would be better if they took a page out of that book.
Well, it's interesting because I think, I look back at it now, and of course, we see the campiness, but I tried to play it straight. I mean, I knew we were over the top, right? And I knew there was kind of a fine line. And it's kind of like I was walking the fence, right? Like, do I make people, they're reacting to this, right? So you're going, are you kidding me? You know, I thought, well, if the actors did that, like, this is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous premise. I thought if the actors responded that way, if we kind of played it that way, it would play more, it would play somewhat more real. I mean, I look back at it now and I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of campy stuff in there. Now, there were gags and stuff that I knew were on the borderline. And I thought, but the movie needed stuff like that. I mean, I wanted to make Aliens.
Yeah. I think it
wasn't going to happen.
I thought it had an aliens feel to it. I would compare it favorably.
And then once kind of the characters, and then like Ron Ashton, who is just, the guy is always funny, and it's just like, the over the top B actor, it's always wanted to be a B actor, was a great guitarist, and so, and then Gunnar Henson, the Leatherface, so that really kind of rounded up. But no, I tried to play it straight with these different characters in the movie and let the situation dictate how they responded to it. And then, at the time too, it was all practical effects. We did a little bit of stop motion and a little bit of compositing to put things together. And there's actually 2 digital computer generated shots in the movie that are really lame. I mean, it was like our first attempt at it, but they're in there, Now Jurassic Park had come out and, we were on the heels of stuff like that. So, I knew, well, we couldn't afford digital effects. We were going to do all practical because that's what we knew how to do. So I look back at it now and some of the shots I really think are great and some are real bad, but it was like, once I got the ball rolling on the movie, we were going down a path with the movie. Mm-hmm. And the content was what it was. We had to deliver it. It wasn't like I could say, well, I'm not going to shoot that scene because I don't think we can do it very good. It's like, no, it was in the script. We have to do it. So it was like we were forcing ourselves. I learned how to make a movie making that movie. And every step I thought, well, I could get away with the miniature here. Like in it, the motorhome is, it's a full scale motorhome. But then there's a sequence where it's being chased by mosquitoes and it flips over. Well, we did the flip over in miniature, big 6-foot miniature. So I knew that I could pull different things off different ways. I knew the house at the end was going to blow up. So we built, like a 15-foot by 20-foot miniature facade and blew that up and, made the biggest miniature we could make to blow up. And so it was planned, there were steps of the way were planned and some things worked better than others. But, the overall was, I think, with the characters just finding themselves in the situation and it's kind of unbelievable. And what are we going to do next? I thought, if I keep that going, the audience won't stop and go, this is ridiculous. This is preposterous, because, Aliens has that, they're caught in it. Mm-hmm. And it was deadly and there was no way out. And the humor in the Aliens is like, it's that terrified humor, like, oh man, we're screwed, man, Mm-hmm. And, I had a little bit of that going here, but again, it was just, trying to keep the characters somewhat straight with a little bit of humor for their characters. And, sometimes I succeeded, sometimes it went way into Campville, but the heart and soul of it was to be, a right out of a 50s type of a situation. And I thought, but today, they have to respond a certain way. So try to do a balance and I was walking a fine line.
Right. So how was the distribution with that? So I know it's been many, many years. What was the initial distribution?
Well, we actually, when we started the movie, I told our investors this was $1 million idea. And because it hadn't really been done. So when we went out and we started screening it, we got an offer from a company called Hemdale for $1 million. They bought the domestic and the foreign rights. And so it was like 500. So we signed $1 million deal for the movie. And it was really surreal because, I had been telling everybody it was $1 million idea. Well, we signed this deal and I was like, it just didn't seem real. Like, this can't be the way it works. Well, it's Hollywood. So of course it's not the way it works, So we signed our deal. We got about like 110,000 as an advance. And it didn't pay off our movie. Our movie was right around 300,000. So we got that advance, but the deal was we were going to get step payments. Every 3 months we'd get 250,000 and another 250. So it was step payments over 6-8 months. Well, we didn't know. We just assumed that was the way business worked, right? Well, my lawyers and all my business partners were from Michigan. We didn't have any business or legal help in LA. Big mistake. So yeah, go play in the Super Bowl or go play in the World Series, and you've never pitched a baseball in your life, right? Like you're going to go in there and succeed, you're going to get chewed up, So we didn't know. So basically, the company that we did the deal with, they went out, we signed the deal. They gave us that small advance, and which was big, for us, it was a big deal. And then they took the movie out and they went to the Cannes Film Festival and did almost $1 million worth of sales in all the foreign territories. And they were like, holy, we're thinking, man, this is great. Not only are we going to get our $1 million, we're going to get royalties beyond that, because it was a percentage beyond that once they recouped, So we started to get excited. Well, 3 months down the line, they asked to delay the first payment, the second payment for a couple more months. And we let them, and then they started saying, hey, we're having some issues with deliverables and stuff. So they dragged it out 6 months before we, we're supposed to get another check. Well, by that point, they went bankrupt. So they were going to go bankrupt before they took our movie. We just didn't know, And I can remember going into their offices in LA and walking down the hall to go in the conference room to do the deal. I remember walking down the hall and there were boxes all stacked up in the hallway. And I thought, oh, wow, this must be all their VHS tapes and posters and stuff. And it was, but it wasn't overstock. It was, they were packing up to leave. I realize now, oh, they were packing the damn building up because, they shut the building down. So, we went in the conference room, did the deal. They served us tea and everything, it was fine. But so, yeah, I learned a big lesson on that, which was, I figured out how to make a movie. What we didn't do is we didn't understand the business. And so I tell filmmakers now, independent filmmakers, you gotta understand how to make a movie and have your plan how to make a movie. But you also have to be completely realistic about where it can go and how it can return money. And you have to understand what the distribution business really is and how it works. We all say, oh, the distributors are all rip-off artists, da, da, da. Well, some are, but it's a tough business. The distributor has to take your movie, right? And sometimes they give you money in advance or not, but they take your movie and then they have to invest time and money in it, selling it. Well, they, let's say they sell it to some platform. Well, that platform may put it out. Let's say they put it in Walmart or something. Walmart says, send us 50,000 DVDs. Well, the distributor's got to manufacture 50,000 DVDs, ship it to the store. There's no money. The store is giving you shelf space. Now, if they sell one DVD, the store keeps half the money. I mean, that's just supply and demand, how it works. So what if you only sell one DVD? You got 49,000 DVDs left. They go, hey, what do you want? Where do you want these? After a couple of months, they're like, movie's not selling. You want us to ship these back, send us a check, or we'll just grind them up. So, and it takes months, there's always 6 months payout, So distributors are on the hook for a long time. This thing takes a long time. So you just got to understand how the business really works. And just because a movie is on Amazon Prime for free, don't assume the filmmakers are making $1 million, because on Amazon Prime, if your movie's on Amazon Prime, unless it's a big Hollywood movie, you're getting 4 cents or 6 cents per view or per half hour view. So you could have 1,000 people watch the movie and you might get $14, so got to just understand the business aspects of what you're, where the product fits, and be honest about where your product fits. We all think, oh, ours will make $1 million. It's up here. You got to look at what's in the market and look where your product fits. Does it fit in that mode or that box? And then try to do due diligence to find out, talk to producers and people if you can contact them. Hey, how is it doing? How is that distributor? How is it working out for you? And I think you're going to find once you start doing that, 1 in 10 make money. 1 in 10. And I'm not saying make a lot. They may get their money back and make $1, so it's a really, really tough business. And it's, but it's exciting. It's exciting to do a product and then see it out there in the marketplace.
Yeah.
My goal, when Mosquito was finished, I'm like, I can't wait to walk into a video store and see it on the shelves. And I walked into Blockbuster and there it was on the shelf. And I'm like, it felt so cool. Now I didn't have any money in my pocket, but my movie's on the shelf. And so filmmakers have to understand there's the vanity part and there's the business part, and if really all you're in it for the vanity, that's fine. you may get a lot of that, but movies are, I always tell people, they ask me about movies, about being art. I go, well, I think it's commercial art. Because if it sells and it makes money, I get to do more art. But it's really a commercial art business, and sure, there's movies out there that are like art. You could hang them on a wall, you watch Goodfellas, or, you could pick the movie. Mm-hmm. They're like fantastic all the way through. They're like seamless. But that's the exception to the rule, right? Most movies aren't that. So it's a very competitive commercial art business. And the more commercial art you are, the more art you get to do. So it's a balancing act, and I had to learn that.
Yeah. So right after Mosquito, you're hired for several hired gun gigs. You were directing TV, like, Xenia and Hercules and Sheena and all of that. Did you get an agent prior to that? Did that move it in, or did you navigate that yourself?
I did. I navigated myself. So what happened was, I came up doing special effects, practical effects, makeup, miniatures, pyro. So I started working for the Evil Dead guys, on Evil Dead 2. I met them actually earlier on Crime Wave. And then I worked on a movie called Strikers War, which became Thou Shall Not Kill Except, where I did all the makeup and special effects. And then through that, I ended up working with Sam Raimi and Rob Tapert and Bruce Campbell on Evil Dead 2, supplying a lot of supplemental effects and miniature trees. And so I started working with those guys. And then I did Army of Darkness, which was a bigger deal for us. So they knew me as an effects guy. And then when I went off to do Mosquito, I didn't ask them for any money. I told Sam, I said, hey, Sam, I'm going to go back to Michigan and make my first movie. He's like, oh, you are? I go, no, I'm not asking for money. All I ask is when it's done, will you take it out? I'll send you a VHS copy of the tape and I'll send you a poster. He goes, sure, buddy. Well, when I got the movie done, I sent them the poster and a VHS tape. And he sent me a nice letter back. And I think they were impressed that I just didn't ask them for money, because everybody was hitting them up. Hey, make my movie,
Of course.
Because they were having success with Evil Dead. I didn't do that. I just went and did it on my own, and then I think they were impressed with the fact that I didn't hit them up for money. And I said, hey, I'm going to go back and make my movie. And I did it, and it was out, it was in Blockbuster and it was on TV. It was everywhere. So through that, I got the directing gigs on, Xena Warrior Princess. And that started me into the TV career directing. But I didn't have an agent when I got that. It wasn't until that first season was over with that I actually went back. I went back to LA. This was all New Zealand. I went back to LA and I started pursuing getting an agent. And I went through several different agents and it never really worked out for me. I could never find any agents that, I had one agent that I'd sent out a bunch of query letters in my movies. And this woman calls me back, and, this female agent, she called back and sent me a nice letter. And that was the only response I got. So of course I went and met her and, we did a deal and off I went, but I never really got any gigs. Like I didn't even get meetings, and I thought, well, so my career pretty much had been me getting the jobs through my connections, friends of mine, and just hustling. So the agency thing never worked for me. I never really got anything. And, I got pretty disappointed with her, just disillusioned with it, and said, you know what? I don't need it. But, it's always good to have a cheerleader, somebody out there pushing you, because you're out there alone. And I always felt like it was necessary to have. I just couldn't find anybody that could get me in the door or was willing to push hard enough, I had plenty of people that wanted to take me on and say, yeah, hey, once we sign you up, we get 10% of all your residuals. I'm like, well, so you want 10% of the movies I already did and the TV show residual money I'm getting? How does that work? Well, we're going to be working hard for you. I'm like, yeah, but you haven't got me anything, So I'm like, sorry, I'm not doing that deal. So I ran into plenty of those ones, but so I just said, you know what, the agency thing's not working for me. And I just had to go it alone, And so I was writing and, pitching, taking meetings and trying to pitch. And I would hook up with other people and kind of draft off of their agents, and we'd go in and pitch stuff. But yeah, I could never crack that. I never met the right person that either believed enough in me or could open any kind of door, I did have one person called me up who wasn't my agent and said, hey, I see you do some good work. I got this connection with a sci-fi movie. and she hooked me up with the sci-fi producer, and turned out I had already worked for the producer like 3 years earlier. But she made the connection. So I said, all right, you're my agent, you know, and off of that. So I got that one thing, but that was it. And after that, nothing. So I you know, I kept her for a little while, and I said, hey, it's time to leave, you know, but yeah, it's a tough thing, you know, but you do want that as an independent filmmaker, artist, actor, any of that. It's very important to try to have people around you that support you, and it gives you the credibility of somebody else out there believes in you. But it's very tough. You're going to have to do 99% of the legwork yourself, you know.
So like you did a pretty good mix of, you know, like hired directing jobs and projects you shepherded yourself. Did you really like doing the hired gun stuff, like working for other people?
Oh yeah, it was great. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, one of the things I got, it was a lot of diverse different projects, but you know, and the other thing is I have a family, and they actually paid real money. And you know, there's nothing better than getting paid for your craft, what you feel you're worth, you know. And I got paid well, and at that time I was getting that top dollar of what those movies paid, so I felt good about it, you know, and got to work with a lot of actors, got to do a lot of cool stuff, got to travel. You know, we shot in LA, then I shot a movie in India, you know, then I will go to Eastern Europe. So no, those were always great. And those calls always came from people that knew what I could do. It wasn't like, oh, we're just thinking about you. You know, they were seeking me out. So I instantly wanted, you know, there's a great connection with that, because you're feeling, well, they're calling me. So they know what I do. They've talked to people. They want me for this, you know? And so that's very gratifying. But, you know, I'm doing these other projects for other people, which is great. The problem is you can't just, it's not like they're every week they're coming in, you know. I'll go 6 months, 8 months, nothing, you know, and people don't understand. There's no money. When you're not making movies, you're not making money, you know, unless your movie is making money at somewhere at the box office or DVDs or whatever, and you're getting a little royalty. So it became that like, well, wow, I'm not, you know, I'm pitching, I'm talking to people, and I'm like, I got to make movies if I'm going to keep relevant, and if I'm going to keep, you know, the skill set. You know, it's interesting. It's like if you're a plumber, I'll use that. It's very simple. And you're plumbing for 10 years, and then you don't work for 3 years. Yeah, you may know how to go and fix the toilet or the sink, but oh wait, am I using the pipe wrench or am I using the crescent? You know, and if you're not practicing your craft, how are you getting better at it? Well, I watch a lot of movies. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to go out there and do it, you know? So my whole thing is I've got to make movies. You know, I can't go 10, you know, 8, 9, 10 years. So, you know, it's like, all right, I'm going to have to go back to the beginning, you know, start making independent films again. And the cool thing is that I had some clout when I went back to it. So I was able to get to some financing and stuff. And it was also, I was able to do some ideas I wanted to do, you know, that I thought, this kind of hadn't been done. Let's do this, you know? So, but I like the jumping back and forth. And I usually, if I get hired on a show, like I got hired to produce a Western while I was doing my Death Block movie, you know, I started shooting my Death Block movie and I kind of stopped it. You know, it was like bits and pieces. Well, I got hired to do this Western, and I went and produced this Western movie. And then I came back after that and took all that money I made on the Western and put it in my movie. So I did the John Cassavetes thing. You know, he would take these movies, and John Cassavetes was this great actor, you know, and he'd do all these high profile Hollywood movies, and they'd pay him a lot of money. And then he'd take all that money and make his independent films.
Right.
You know, because he's like, hey, if no one else is going to do it, I'm going to do it myself. And I really respected that. I thought, man, that's it. You're putting your money where your mouth is. And so I've always done that. I've always taken the money I've made doing other work and put it in my own movies to start it off. And then I've always found investors to come in and help.
Right.
You know, but you're always, you know, you always got your skin in the game first. That's sort of my rules. Like, I don't ask anybody to put money in if I haven't already done it.
I think that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of, I don't want to say younger filmmakers, but inexperienced filmmakers that just, they feel like with the fundraising and stuff, it's like, it's got to be all somebody else, like somebody else, that's somebody else's responsibility to
Right.
finance my dream.
Well, it's like you're owed.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
owe you.
Yeah. Entitled, right?
Wait a minute. So you want me to give you money to learn? I mean, you want to take my money and figure out how to do it? I don't get it, you know? So yeah, I mean, look, you can rationalize it any way you want, but the bottom line that's always worked for me was if I had an idea for a movie like this Escape from Death Block 13, I'm like, all right, I'm going to spend at least $10,000 developing it. It's just going to happen. You know, I've had movies where we spent up to 50 that never got made, which means you don't get it back, you know? So I always put the skin in the game to get started. And then I'm usually the first investor in with a sizable chunk of money. Say, all right, we're going. I got a shoot date. I've booked the locations. I've hired the actors. We're in prep. I've put this much on the line. Come on and join.
Right.
And that's the circus thing, you know, like with the circus, you know, if you see somebody in a fancy car driving down the street, you know, with flags and everything and playing music, eventually people get in line behind it. And so you have to do that. I mean, if you can do it without it, God bless you, you know, but I've always found that investors or people that will finance and come aboard don't want to be the first one in the wagon, you know, because they don't want to drive the wagon. They want you to be able to drive that wagon. And it's always like, okay, you're going to drive that wagon, where the horses run out of steam or not, you're going to get out there and tow it yourself, you know? So once they know that, then it's incumbent upon them to like, do I get involved? Do I miss out? Am I going to miss out on something fun here? You know, and when they see you're all in, people want to help you, you know, like if you're on the side of the road and you got a flat tire and, you know, you can't lift the tire up. Somebody's going to pull over and help you, you know. But if you sit on the side of the road with a flat tire in the car and you never get out of the car, no one's going to pull over, you know. So I mean, that's just kind of my rule.
Right.
It's always worked for me.
So like when it comes to like Death Block 13, or when you're developing any new projects these days, what is your process for developing a new project?
One of the first things is, you know, first off, I got to have an idea, right? So I come up with a kind of concept or idea that I want to do. And it's usually based on a couple of things. Sometimes it's based on like, I really want to do an action movie. I want to do an escape movie, you know? Like I'll give you for like how Death Block came about. And this is kind of how it almost always happens with me. I live not too far from the prison we used. And it's the prison where they shot the Shawshank Redemption. So I drive by that prison and go, man, that place is cool, you know? And I've been in it. I know the people that run it. And I thought, man, it'd be great to do a prison escape movie there. Guns and riots, and it's really cool. But I go, the prison's really dilapidated. You know, they're fixing it up. But how do I get past the fact that it looks like it's run down? And I'm like, what's my story? I'm like, well, what if the state doesn't have the money to fix it up, but they hire an outside firm, you know, like that come in and like, because there's firms that run prisons. There's like corporations that just do prisons that get hired. So I thought, well, what if they hire a firm to do it? They're renovating the prison. So the inmates are at, you know, it's not a full prison. There's 100 or 200 inmates, but the inmate's job is to renovate the prison. And that's what they're doing at the prison. You know, they're constantly fixing up. So they got scaffolding and brooms and all this kind of windows. So I thought, well, my inmates could be doing the work. And the people running the prison, maybe they're from like Youngstown, Ohio or New Jersey. Maybe they're a mob, you know. What if they're using it for nefarious purposes? So it, you know, it influenced the story. And then I started kind of cultivating an idea. Well, then, you know, I'd met Robert Bronzy Kovacs. And of course, I'd worked on, you know, a previous movie with him called Death Kiss. And I had the idea, man, you know, I wanted to make this 70s retro action movie. And I thought, wow, if he's in it, it gets us that look. So these elements are floating around in front of me and I'm just kind of plucking them out and figuring out how to put them together. And that's kind of how these things happen, you know, my movies happen anyways. It's a germ of an idea. And then how do I make it something that we can do? And how do I make it interesting enough that will be fresh for the audience, you know? And so it's a constant balancing act of pulling elements together and developing it. And, you know, like Axe Giant, The Wrath of Paul Bunyan, which was the previous movie, my producing partner, Jeff Miller, and I were sitting at a coffee shop in LA, kind of talking about what we could do next. We'd start about killer movies and, guy with an axe. And then Jeff said, what about like Paul Bunyan? What if Paul Bunyan's an axe killer? And I went, nah, dude, come on, it's Paul Bunyan. But then I started seeing Paul Bunyan as a monster, not as a man. And I started thinking, wait a minute, what if we made him a monster and we made him like, not 100 feet tall, but what if he's 18, 20 foot tall, and we put him in a suit, we put him in a green screen, and we make everybody else smaller so that it's a practical monster suit rather than CG. And I could do miniature cabin and miniature stuff and make the people running around him, green screen. And, I started to get an idea how we could make it work. And so it was a germ of an idea sitting in a coffee shop. And a real quick story is, so we're coming up with this idea how we can do it. And we're talking about these characters we could have in it. We have this old guy in it that, can give us the backstory, about how Paul Bunyan became Paul Bunyan. And we're thinking, yeah, we'll get this guy Meeks, everything. And across the way was, excuse me, Joe Estevez was sitting over there drinking coffee. And we're like, Joe could play Meeks. We're just coming up with ideas and starting to write. We went over and introduced ourselves. Hey, Joe, hey, great to meet you. Hey, we're working on this project. Great, I'd love to. Send me a script. So, so that, again, once you start that process, that creative process, if you're open to the elements and everything out there, you sort of appear and you're like, wow, I could use that. I could use that and it could make it different. And so that was, that's kind of how I do it, like Death Block was, I wanted to do a prison escape movie, like a 70s action movie,
Right. So have you lived in Ohio for most of your career?
I grew up in Michigan and we moved to California. I moved to California back in the 90s, right around the time I had finished my first movie and went to New Zealand. And then we kind of relocated to California for about 10, 11 years. Then we moved back to Michigan in like 2005. And I immediately came down to Ohio, 2005, to work with my buddy, Bob Kurtzman. He left LA, came back, and he bought a bowling alley and turned it into a movie studio. And he's like, hey, let's make our independent movie. So I came down here, to Ohio, and we started making movies here. And I've been here ever since, it's worked out.
Right. Do you like making stuff outside of, like LA now?
Yeah. I really like LA. I really loved working in LA because it was the dream growing up. We're driving on the studio a lot at Universal.
Yeah.
Parking and going in. It's just the factory. It's great. I love that factory setup. But working away from LA has a lot of advantages. There a whole lot of things open up. Like I go into Mansfield, we're going to shoot this movie, and we start talking to business owners and stuff. And we're like, you guys make movies? So there's already an instant level of a big interest level, and I'd like to be involved. And what that usually means is they'll be involved, and you can get things and resources very cheaply, or even inexpensively with giving people credit or having them be involved in the movie. So all of a sudden the resources kind of open up. The downside is it's not like you can make a phone call and have an entire crew tomorrow. You have to search for people that are good in lighting and camera and stuff, and they're around, but it's like go to the bigger cities to get people. So the personnel crew is a little tough. Resources you can get anywhere now. You can get stuff, but that's the flip side. Like if I go to LA, we did Axe Giant. We went to LA. Within a week, we had a crew. Within 2 weeks, we were shooting 8 days of the movie. Just like it's literally that quick. There's so many crew and so many assets. They're all there. And you get to kind of pick and choose. But in LA, there's some cost factors that are pretty enormous too. So, but yeah, so there's a balancing act. But I really like working out of LA on independent movies and finding the location and the resources and the people that get involved that have not been jaded or kind of burned too many times. And I find that the excitement level is just over the top, and it always works for us on the independent films.
Right. When you're looking back, like at your career, like you've done so many different like good projects. Are there some specific ones that stick out to you as highlights?
Well, I have, Death Block 13 right now. It's always the one I just did, right?
Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean, I look, Mosquito is kind of a benchmark because it was a game plan to get into the business, and it completely worked. The $1 million thing was the bonus, which I didn't get, but it was dangled out there. So, that gave me a little false sense of some security. But yeah, I mean, I have to say, when I was doing special effects, working on the Evil Dead movies was just a hoot, and I'm so happy to be part of that legacy. Those things are classics. Hard Target, doing effects, working with John Woo. So working with Sam Raimi and John Woo are like two of the directors that I got to really work closely with and learn from, And so from an effects standpoint, yeah, the Evil Dead stuff, Hard Target, but from the movie standpoint, Mosquito. And then I have to say, I did a movie called Crocodile 2 Death Swamp, and we shot the movie in India. And, India was not a destination that I was going to travel to for a vacation. It just, you don't think of it. But I'm so glad we went to India because it was just an astounding experience. Just meeting the people and working with the crew there and just absorbing India, and no matter what you do, that place seeps into your movie. So that's it was a very special experience for us, doing a movie that, I have to say Crocodile. And then, Bulgaria and Romania too. I mean, again, it's the travel, and get to go to these places. I'm working in a castle up in Transylvania, on a sci-fi movie. I mean, it's kind of wondrous, but I'll go to, Mosquito, and then I'll have to say Xena Warrior Princess. I learned everything, on how to make stuff quickly, how to get things done, how to not waste time on things. And then of course, Death Block 13. I mean, there's a whole lot of slew of movies in between, and, Boogeyman 3 was great. Again, another one of those benchmarks where I went, great. I don't have giant creatures. I have limited effects. I'm just going to scare people. I got to flex that muscle a little bit, and that was working for Sony and, Sony Pictures. And so it was great, so I really had a lot of nice jumping around. So it's really hard to peg one, but those are some of the benchmarks, and of course my next one will be my favorite. It's always
Of course. So Death Block 13 just started rolling out.
Yep.
What is the distribution plan for that, and who is distributing it?
So with Death Block 13, Escape from Death Block 13, basically we have for our US and Canadian distribution, we're with a company called Uncorked Entertainment. That's Keith Leopard, and he's handling all the domestic stuff. So right now we're on demand, video on demand. We're on, people can pay to watch it on their local cable stations, where they have Spectrum or Dish or DirecTV, and it's on Amazon. You can go on Amazon and pay to watch it. We're going to be on Google Play and iTunes soon, Vudu. So it's everywhere. The DVD comes out at the end of the month. It'll be pretty much exclusively in Walmart for the in-store, but people will be able to get it online on Amazon and, all the usual places that they buy DVDs. So that'll be coming out. Concurrently, we have a foreign sales rep, Jack Campbell, whose company is called Octane Entertainment. They've been making sales around the world. So we've been delivering to foreign countries over the last 3 months also. So we'll be coming out in England, and we've got Scandinavia, and there's, Thailand and a couple of countries in Eastern Europe. So it's starting to really make its inroads out there too. In October, before we came out basically November 2nd on all the on-demand. October was kind of my month to go out and do theatrical, which I did my own theatrical on it. I wanted to get it in certain theaters around the country to give it a screen feel to it, And so we played up in Michigan, and we did a drive-in in Michigan, one of the biggest drive-ins in the country, for a week, and we were on a double bill with the Many Saints of Newark. So I'm like, I got to drive up to Michigan and see, Sopranos movie and Escape from Death Block 13, double bill. So we paid and watched both movies. It was great, So I love to be in the second bill on a movie, And so we've done a couple of drive-ins. We did Columbus, Cleveland. We did our screening out in LA, and we're actually screening up in Wisconsin now. We have 1 week up in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, at the Downtown Cinema. and that'll probably be the end of our theatrical run. So it's kind of bottlenecking right up with our bigger release. But I couldn't be happier. I mean, we're getting out everywhere, and it's people won't be able to escape. It's going to be somewhere where you turn around, it'll be there. So I'm very excited. I mean, we got the distribution really quickly, and we got it out very quickly. It's the fastest it's ever happened for me.
Right. So, do you have something on deck next, or are you still kind of looking for the next one?
No, actually, I've been developing two different things. I have a sequel to Death Block that I've been working on, and then also a brand new movie with a whole new character, kind of to start off a whole new series. It's not John Wick, but it's kind of a character piece like that has a couple of interesting characters that we can follow, and it's action, definitely action.
Cool. So you're kind of pursuing a little more action stuff these days.
Yeah, well, those two I've been actually started developing them a while ago. But once I got Death Block done, I'm like, this really was comfortable, and everything I learned on Death Block, I'm going to apply to the next one. Yeah. So the next one's going to be bigger and better and bolder, and each time I take what I learned or what I could do differently and make better, and I want to apply it. So rather than go off and make a musical or a horror movie, and I've got a couple of horror movies on deck too that I put on the back burner. I wanted to get right back in the next action piece and really knock it out of the park and make it even better than Death Block. So it's like a goal. Yeah. All right, now we're going to go here with this,
that is something I did want to ask about, because I was watching Death Block and I was really impressed at the scale of it for the budget, especially. Yeah. Like when it comes to doing, like lower budget, like action movies, what were some of the stumbling blocks? I've directed a ton of movies, but I've never done any kind of action on anything close to that scale. So it's hard for me to even imagine how you pulled some of that off.
Well, like I said, I would drive by that prison and go, "What? I should do an escape movie there." So one of the things I did is I knew the people that ran the prison, and I said, "Hey, if you guys need it, I want to get some shoot days here." Well, other movies have come in and it costs a lot of money to shoot there. So I did a trade with them. I did a bunch of graphics and billboards because they run a haunt there every year. So I did a bunch of graphics and trailers for their haunts. And I shot them like a 45-minute training video. So I did a trade. I said, look, I don't have a lot of money, but I need 6-7 days. So I'm like, all right, I'll do this work for you. If you can give me this for this rate, I can do this work for you. So for 2 years running up to the movie, I was doing work for them. So again, it's that whole thing of like, what can you do? What skill do you have? Can you cut the lawn? If you can cut the guy's lawn, he might let you use the barn to shoot it, So I always take that approach of like, how do I get that? How can I get that in the movie? Because you got to find the scope, right? We don't get to come out next to like Red Notice or these other big movies and say, give us a pass because we're low budget. Audiences don't care, right? So you've got to, like, if you're saying you're doing a prison escape movie and your poster shows that and your trailer shows that and you don't deliver it, you're cheating the audience. So my goal is always the audience gets a bigger movie than what the trailer or the poster shows. We're showing all the cool stuff, but it's got to be bigger, because you don't want to go, oh, all the great stuff's in the trailer. That's all they had, So it's really about finding the elements of like, what can make this big and special? Well, I had the prison. It's $1 million sets, The problem is because I didn't pay enough money, I had to work around the tours, and the tours ended at 4 p.m. So I couldn't start shooting till after 4, and I would shoot from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. So now that puts the burden on us to work the crew split day and into night and shift from day to night, night to day, move the lights. So it made it a ton harder to do. So yes, the blessing is I got those sets, but it was going to be tougher for me to shoot in them. So I always try to look for, like I said, the elements, and then getting all the wrestlers involved gave me the bonus of they could do performances and they could do stunts, and I didn't have to double them. So I got a 2-for-1, and they're all characters. So, and they loved, for them, it was a great promotional opportunity. So again, a win-win that I could bring in. And so, like I said, these elements are floating around, and then you start to see what you can muster. But I've always had a big appetite. I always take more on my plate than I can eat. And so I'm always catching up Like, oh, damn, you know, and I got to make sure it's like, well, with the prison, I got to a point where, well, look, this is too cool. I can't end it here. I've got to expand this action bigger because I've led the audience down here and this is not enough. I would not be satisfied. So that changed my script. It upped the budget a bit, had to shoot more and do more effects. But again, it was like the movie started to make itself and I had to follow that path. So yeah, it's always a struggle to get the cool and big elements in there, but there's always a price you pay. It's not like, oh, it's a piece of cake, you know? You're gonna work from 4 in the afternoon till 4 in the morning. Well, what do you think happens at 8 o'clock at night? The energy level goes, psh. So you don't get 5 or 6 straight hours of great work after 9 o'clock. You're lucky to get 2. So your shoot time is you got to shoot more days. So once again, it's like it's a balancing act, you know. I think from an independent filmmaker standpoint, scope is very important. If you know someone has an airport, has a Learjet, you can use it. It looks big. It looks like money. Hollywood have to pay a lot of money for that. But if you know the people that run it, you get it in your movie. Don't put people in a room or in the woods against a tree. Put them against something that's big and it's cool. You know, find the cool building to shoot in front of. You know, find the scope to the shot to give it an air of bigness. You know, figure out how to get dimension and all that stuff. And you know, that's how you can kind of compete and get things big. Now, of course, in Death Block, because I do visual effects, I'm like, I'll just do the visual effects later. Well, yeah, you know, 700-800 shots later, you know, everybody's firing guns and everything's blowing up. Now I got to sit in front of a couple of computers for 8 months and do that work. So, so yeah, that's the thing is, you know, use your skills. You figure out what skills you've got that you can bring to it, what you have to pay for, what you don't have to pay for. It's a balancing act, you know. There's never enough money in independent films, you know. We can't go back to the bank all the time. It just doesn't happen.